Some stories don't start with a scream, they begin with a whisper, faint, stale, like breath trapped in an envelope for half a century. It was raining sideways when I got back to the old house in Hallowell County. That's not a town, by the way. It's just a bend in the road next to two collapsing barns and a diner that never changed its name from restaurant. The kind of place where even ghosts would feel like they were interrupting something. I hadn't been there in 16 years. Not since my mom packed the car in the middle of the night with 3 trash bags and an open jar of peanut butter and muttered, "Don't look back." But now she was gone. Cancer, fast and mean. And apparently, I was the last of us still breathing. So it fell to me to sort through what was left. Lucky me. Anyway, on my first morning back, I found a letter in the mailbox. That alone was strange, considering the mailbox itself was a rusted-out metal husk hanging by one screw. The flag hadn't been raised. The house had no official mailing address anymore. And the letter? No stamp. Just my name, Mara Hallowell, written in a hand I'd seen before but couldn't quite place. The paper was old, the kind that feels soft and almost dusty. It smelled like lemon balm and dry rot. The message inside was short, neat cursive. Confident, feminine. You are the last. The next Thursday is the thinnest. Don't sleep beneath the gable. We miss you already. I didn't like that, especially the we. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. Also, drop your location and local time in the comments. Just curious where you're watching from. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. I tucked the letter into my coat pocket, told myself it was just some weird small-town prank. But my stomach disagreed. You know that feeling when you almost remember a nightmare, but it's just out of reach and it still ruins your whole morning? That's what it felt like, holding that paper. The house was as quiet as I remembered, but not in a comforting way. It was the kind of quiet that waits for you to speak first. Let me back up. The Hallowell family was, and I'm being generous here, insular. Not cult insular, but like, you don't marry outsiders or they'll die from the wrong chicken broth. Insular. A long line of midwives, herbalists, and female doctors before that was even a profession. We weren't poor, but we didn't talk about money. We didn't talk about a lot of things, especially the girls. That's what stuck with me, even as a kid. There were never pictures of the girls, never framed school portraits. My cousin Caleb had a whole shelf dedicated to his baseball trophies and an elaborate model train. But his sister Sarah? Nothing. No baby photos. No drawings on the fridge. I thought she was just shy. Later, I'd find out Sarah was the 7th to disappear. At that point, I didn't know how many, just that something wasn't right. That something hadn't been right for a very long time. Anyway, the attic was the warmest place in the house, so I brought my sleeping bag up there the first night. You'd think I'd be too creeped out to sleep in a century-old attic filled with dusty doll heads and broken furniture, but honestly, it was the only place that didn't smell like mildew or regret. I lay there, listening to the wind scratch the siding and tried to ignore the groaning pipes, or what I hoped were pipes. At some point, I drifted off, and then I dreamed of yellow wallpaper and 17 white dresses hanging in a row. The hem of the last one was still dripping. When I woke up, the letter was gone. I swear I'd zipped it into my coat pocket, and the coat was still zipped up next to me. But the paper was gone. What wasn't gone, though, was the impression of it, like it had been burned into my memory. I could still feel the soft fold in the center, the curled edges of the ink. Later that day, while looking through old kitchen drawers for a can opener, I brought ravioli, don't judge, I found a second letter. Same paper, same handwriting. The first girl was Sable. The next one is you, unless you go home. Again, no envelope, just sitting there. Under a box of wax paper that expired in 1989. No one could have put it there in the time since. But here's the kicker. There was a girl named Sable, my great-aunt. The eldest daughter of the first branch of the family tree. I'd heard her name whispered once when I was 9, then never again. She disappeared in 1972. She was 17. And now she was writing to me? There's an old saying around here, the dead don't write letters, but they do remember addresses. It's something my grandmother used to say before she forgot all our names. That night, I didn't sleep under the gable. I stayed downstairs on the couch and left the light on. And around 3:12 a.m., I heard footsteps in the attic above me. Slow, careful, like someone trying not to wake a baby, or maybe trying not to wake me. I didn't go up. You think I'm stupid? This isn't a horror movie. I made some tea, pulled the blanket tighter, and pretended I didn't hear the creaking grow louder. But I didn't sleep. Not really. Just waited for Thursday. Because Thursday was tomorrow, and I was the only girl left. You ever realize something too late and then get mad at yourself for not noticing it sooner? That's how it was with our family photos. I woke up the morning after the attic footsteps with one clear thought. There are no girls on the walls. And I don't mean like barely any. I mean none. Not one smiling daughter, no school portraits, no grainy snapshots of pigtails and missing teeth and scraped knees. There were family pictures, sure, framed and dusted, lined up above the fireplace and down the staircase wall. But when you looked closely, every photo was just the men and the boys, fathers and sons, uncles and nephews. A little generational parade of serious faces in Sunday clothes. It was like the girls never happened. And if you asked me to name all the girls in our family, even now, I could only tell you a few. That's the thing. When you don't hear a name out loud for 20 years, your brain starts filing it away like it's not important. It floats to the back, behind math facts and bad birthday parties. That's where they all lived, until now. After breakfast, I say breakfast, but it was black coffee and half a granola bar I found in my coat, I decided to check the old filing cabinet in the back room. Every family has one, right? That musty metal beast where birth certificates, insurance papers, and expired warranties go to die. I had to jimmy the drawer open with a screwdriver. The files were crammed and brittle, most of them labeled in my grandfather's scratchy hand. Taxes, livestock, insulin, 1980s. But wedged in the back was a green folder with no label, and inside, a family tree. Not a cute, printed one, with clip art leaves and little hearts around the names. This was hand-drawn, in pencil, faint and careful, and just like the photographs, only the men were circled. The women's names were written smaller, lighter, and every single one of them, 17 I counted, had been crossed out with an X so sharp it cut into the paper. Sable Hallowell, 1972, Naomi Hallowell, 1978, Eleanor Hallowell, 1981, and so on. Sarah, Esther, June, Claire, every 6 years or so. The last name on the list was written in my mom's handwriting. Mara, 1999. No X, not yet. The men had no notes, no years, no marks, just thick, confident lines connecting them like fence posts. The women, though, they all vanished between ages 14 and 21. The prime of something. I don't know why, but my hands started shaking then. I had to sit on the floor for a while, next to a box labeled spare knobs, like that was somehow comforting. Here's something weird, though. Remember how I said the girls disappeared every few years? None of them were reported missing. Not a single police report. I checked the local archives at the tiny library in town later that day. The Hallowells were prominent enough that the town kept clippings, wedding announcements, land purchases, PTA elections. But the girls, nothing, not even a classified ad. It was like they'd been quietly edited out of reality. And here's the creepiest part. Every disappearance happened in either June or July, right around the solstice. You want to hear something dumber than the footsteps in the attic? I convinced myself for like half a second that maybe all the girls had just run away. Maybe they couldn't stand the family and pieced out without saying goodbye. But 17 separate times? Over 4 decades? Nah, not possible. Even bad families don't lose 17 girls by accident. Later that afternoon, I explored the upstairs hall, the one with the 4 bedrooms. I'd forgotten how long it was. Narrow too, like it had been designed for thinner people with fewer secrets. Each bedroom had a different nameplate on the door, engraved brass, no first names, just initials, SHNHEHCH. Only one door didn't have a plate. It was painted over, sealed shut, but something told me not to open it yet. Like if I did, I'd speed something up I didn't want catching up to me. So I went back downstairs, pretended I was just here for paperwork, for closure, not for ghosts. The joke's on me, though, because I found something else that made the hair on my arms stand up. In the back of the living room, behind a shelf of Reader's Digest books no one's read since the Nixon era, there was a small wooden box. I only noticed it because the light from the window hit its metal latch just right. You ever get that feeling like your eyes are being guided to something? The box wasn't locked. Inside was a stack of birth certificates, rubber banded together. All girls. All Hallowell. Most of them matched the names on the family tree, except one. At the very back of the stack was a certificate that hadn't yellowed like the others. It was pristine, modern paper, glossy ink, issued in 1999. Mara Elaine Hallowell, my name. Under parent information, only one name was typed. Mother, Elaine Sable Hallowell. Father. I just sat there staring at it. My mom's full name was never Elaine. It was Monica, or at least that's what she told me. That's what was on her driver's license, her emails, her funeral. So who was Elaine Sable? It didn't make sense. Unless that was her. A name change. A fresh start. Maybe she was Sable. Maybe she escaped. Faked a death, changed her name, had me, and raised me far enough from Hallowell to break the pattern. But then why did she bring me back here? And why did she say on her deathbed in a whisper I thought was just morphine nonsense, 17th is the last one. You close the gate. I didn't know what it meant then. I think I'm starting to. That night I didn't sleep at all. I kept the lights on, the doors locked, the kitchen knife nearby, and just after 4 a.m. I heard a soft knock on the sealed bedroom door upstairs. One knock. Pause. Then two. Like a pattern. Or a warning. You ever walk into a room you've been in 100 times before and suddenly it feels off? Not like someone moved the furniture off. I mean off like the walls are watching you remember something you were supposed to forget. That's what happened when I stepped into what used to be Aunt Sable's sewing room. It wasn't really hers, at least not legally, but everyone called it her room, even after she vanished. She was the first. Remember? The first girl to go missing. I used to sneak in there when I was 5 or 6 because it had the softest chair and this ridiculous ceramic cat lamp with glowing eyes. The kind that seems cute until it's 3 a.m. and staring into your soul. The room was mostly untouched, which was weird enough. Like someone had been in there keeping it tidy all these years. The sewing machine was still threaded. The thimble lay where a hand should have picked it up and never did. Dust didn't cover everything evenly. Some surfaces were nearly clean. That's always a red flag in an abandoned house, like someone's still using it. And in the far corner, built into the wall like it had been added quietly and poorly, was a small wooden cabinet with a steel padlock. I don't know why, but I suddenly felt furious. Like the moment I saw that lock, I needed it open. Needed it now. It was like something in me remembered that it had once been locked against me. The key, miraculously, wasn't hard to find. It was in the drawer under the sewing machine, taped to the bottom with medical gauze. Very subtle, Aunt Sable. When I clicked it open, a dusty sigh escaped the wood, like even the cabinet had been holding its breath for too long. Inside were 3 things. 1, a leather-bound journal. 2, a flat wooden box the size of a bread tin. 3, a small glass vial with something black and crumbly inside, labeled only, "To stop the echo." That was the first time I felt the back of my throat tighten involuntarily, like my body knew what was coming before my brain did. I opened the journal first, because obviously, the cover was soft with age and sweat, the pages crinkled from damp air and long nights. The first entry was dated July 10th, 1972. They said I was the beginning, but I know I'm only a repeat. The old women did this long before I was born, and they will keep doing it long after I'm gone, unless I do something. There's something about the blood. It's always about the blood. They told us we were healers. What they meant was we were vessels, fertile ones. Fun. I skimmed ahead. The handwriting got messier, more frantic. The ceremony is called the crossing. It must be done with a daughter on a Thursday during the thinnest moon. They say it's to preserve the line, but I think they just want to disappear us before we disappear ourselves. A few pages later, I didn't tell them about Elaine. She was born too early. I told them she died. She didn't. I ran. She's safe, I think. Elaine. So that's it. My mother wasn't Sable. She was Sable's daughter. That makes me the granddaughter of the first girl who tried to run. And now I was back, like a perfect circle, just waiting to close. I sat there for a while, not reading, just holding the book, feeling how warm it had become in my hands, like it had a pulse of its own. Then I opened the wooden box. Inside were old cloths tightly rolled, stained with reddish-brown. Not rust. I knew that smell. Iron-rich, dried blood. Some had names stitched onto the edges. Naomi, Esther, Claire. Each girl had her cloth, some embroidered with moons, one with a tree that had no leaves. I closed the lid. Then I picked up the vial. To stop the echo. What echo? At first, I thought maybe it was poison or incense or something herbal. Our family loved dried plants that made no sense. But when I tilted the vial, the contents shifted slightly. Not dust, not herbs, teeth, baby teeth. 17 of them. Nope, nope, nope. I dropped the vial back in the cabinet and slammed the door, and that's when I heard it. Not footsteps this time. A hum. Very low, just a single note, barely perceptible, like a refrigerator running 3 rooms away, but it vibrated in the floorboards, like it came from the house, not through it. Then a voice, whisper soft, like a breath right next to my ear. You know now. That's it. Nothing else. But I bolted. I'm not proud of it. I tripped over a table leg on my way out and cracked my shin against the old rocking chair. I didn't even bother locking the cabinet. I just ran down the stairs and into the backyard. The air outside was like ice compared to the inside of that house, like stepping out of someone else's fever dream. I didn't go back inside until sunset, and when I did, the cabinet was locked again, padlock and all. But the key? Gone, like I'd never opened it at all. Later that night, I flipped through the family tree again, just looking at the names. That's when I noticed something I hadn't before. The initials of every missing girl, listed in order, spelled out a message. SNECJMEHKALECCJSM. I wrote them down, stared at them until my eyes blurred, and then I saw it. She's me, over and over, repeating through the letters. She's me, she's me, she's me. That's when I realized something worse had been haunting the Hallowells. It was inheritance. You'd think after finding a vial full of baby teeth and a journal about blood rituals, I'd have left. Gotten in my car, driven until I hit the coast, and never looked back. But the sewing room wouldn't let me go. I know how that sounds. It's a room. It doesn't have arms or claws or any agency. But you ever stand outside a door and feel like it's leaning toward you? Like it wants something from you? That's what the sewing room did. And when I walked back in, right after sunrise, when I knew the light would be at its safest, it smelled warm. Not the gross, stale warmth of rot. I mean like fresh cotton, steamed linen, a hint of peppermint and rosewater, just like my great-aunt Sable supposedly wore. The window was cracked open, just a sliver, but enough for the lace curtain to shift like a breathing chest. And on the table, a brand new dress, half finished, ivory muslin, tiny pleats. My size. I hadn't seen it there the day before. The thimble was back too, right next to the fabric, like someone had been sitting there working and only just stepped out. There was even a spool of pale blue thread hanging off the edge like a ribbon in mid-fall. And I swear to you, the needle was still warm. I touched it and felt that faint metal heat you get when someone else has just used it. Nope, times 2. I stepped away from the table and pulled the curtain wide open, trying to let as much reality in as possible. The morning sun hit the dress and made it almost glow. It looked bridal, or like something worn by girls just before, well, That's when I saw the embroidery on the hem. White thread on ivory fabric, barely visible. 3 letters, MEH, my initials. It wasn't a memory. It wasn't something I misremembered. Someone was sewing me a dress. In this house. This week. I backed out of the room, careful not to touch anything else, and went straight to the hallway mirror. I had to see myself. Just to confirm I was still here, that I hadn't already been folded into the dress like a paper doll. When I looked into the mirror, I was there. But for a split second, blink and miss it fast, someone else was standing just behind me. Shorter, with long, dark braids and a white dress just like mine. She didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there. And then she was gone. My brain told me it was a shadow, maybe a trick of light. But my gut said, Esther, cousin Esther, disappeared in 1987, 17 years old. Loved braiding her hair and collecting snow globes. Her snow globe collection was still upstairs, by the way. I found it later that afternoon. One of them had fresh condensation on the inside, like it had just been shaken. I guess what I'm trying to say is, the house was breathing again. More than that, it was remembering. And it wasn't just dressmaking and snow globes. The deeper I went into the house, the more recent everything felt, like someone was turning back time in increments. Kitchen counters I remembered being cluttered were suddenly spotless. The broken lamp in the hallway was standing upright again. Even the fridge, which hadn't been plugged in for years, was humming faintly. And in the bathroom, the mirror cabinet was cracked open with a tube of lipstick on the sink. Shade, Evening Poppy. A color discontinued in 1994. I checked the back of the mirror, just to be sure. No batteries, no speakers, no reason it should have been fogged up like someone had just taken a hot shower. Except someone had. The towel rack was warm. One towel had a strand of long dark hair clinging to it. I don't have long dark hair. You know that moment when your brain starts whispering, okay, I know we don't believe in this stuff, but what if? That was the soundtrack in my head all day. So I called the only person who might believe me, Caleb, my cousin. He picked up on the second ring and said, "You're in the house, aren't you?" No hello. No how's the haunting. Just that. I told him about the letter, the journal, the vial. He didn't ask questions, didn't laugh, just said, "You need to get out before Thursday." "It is Thursday," I said. He was silent for a full 5 seconds. Then don't sleep in your room tonight. Don't sleep under the gable. That's where she took Naomi." "Who's she?" More silence. Then Caleb said something I still don't understand. "The house wants its daughters back. It always does." I didn't sleep in my room that night. I didn't sleep at all. I sat in the kitchen with every light on, holding a snow globe, listening to the walls creak. And around 2:45 a.m., I heard the sewing machine upstairs start running, just for a moment, just one stitch, like a heartbeat, and then it stopped. There's something about a Thursday that feels like a shrug. It's not glamorous like Friday or urgent like Monday. It's the kind of day you forget about until something terrible happens on it, like 17 girls, one after the other, vanishing without a trace. That morning, I didn't even bother making coffee. What was the point? The whole house already felt like it had caffeine in the walls, like if I sat too still, the floorboards would start pulsing under me. So I did what any rational adult woman would do when haunted by intergenerational female trauma and a sewing machine with a mind of its own. I opened up my laptop and started building a spreadsheet. That's right, a spreadsheet. I needed logic. A pattern, something my brain could organize before it unraveled like every dress in that sewing room. I listed every Hallowell daughter I could find from the family tree, from Sable in 1972 to June in 2003. 17 names. I added columns for age, disappearance date if I had it, and anything weird I could remember. And there it was, Thursdays. Every time. Some were early in the morning, some just after dinner. But each girl was last seen on a Thursday, the second Thursday in June or July. No birthdays, no weddings, no loud events. Just gone. No missing posters, no news articles, no candlelight vigils, like they were never supposed to be missed. Even worse, each Thursday was within 3 days of a new moon. And if you know anything about folklore or family superstitions, same difference, you know the new moon isn't just emptiness. It's when things cross over. Funny how no one talks about that at the dinner table. I called Caleb again. Why didn't anyone ever report them missing? I asked. 17 girls, and no one called the cops. He didn't answer right away. I heard him exhale like he was blowing out a match. Then he said, because no one outside noticed they were gone. I waited. What does that mean? It means, he said, that the house remembers how to forget. I know, that sounds like nonsense, but when you're standing in a room that smells like rose water and warm thread, and you know for a fact that no one has lived there in 20 years, nonsense starts to make a lot of sense. That afternoon, I went back upstairs to check on the sewing room. The dress was gone, just gone. Needle, thread, fabric, everything cleared away. The sewing machine still had heat rising off it like it had been used 5 minutes ago, but there was nothing left, except a note on the floor written in careful, slanted cursive. You are not ready. The dress will wait. Esther again. Or maybe Elaine. Or maybe I was writing these things to myself in my sleep. I wouldn't have been the first Hallowell girl to go quietly insane before disappearing. I decided to check the rest of the upstairs. There was one room I hadn't gone into yet, the one with no nameplate. The door painted shut, the one that had knocked. I should have waited until daylight, but curiosity is a drug, and I was already deep in the relapse. I found a hammer and carefully chipped away at the paint seal. The door opened slower than it should have, with the kind of creak that makes your skin pull tighter across your bones. The room was dark, no windows, just a single bare light bulb hanging from a frayed cord. And in the center on the floor was a circle of salt, fresh. Inside the circle, a crib, an antique one, iron bars painted white, the paint peeling in long, curling flakes. In the crib was a blanket. On the blanket, embroidered in tiny, perfect stitching, for the 18th. That's me. I know it. You know it. The house definitely knows it. I stepped closer and the bulb flickered. Not like a normal flicker, like it blinked. And then I heard it again. That hum. Low, steady, just below human hearing. Like the sound your ears make when you're too deep in a cave or under too much water. It vibrated through my ribs, and over it layered faintly something else, singing, a lullaby, off-key. Old-fashioned. 18 steps to cross the floor. 18 hands will close the door. 18 girls in line will wait. One to open, one to gate. I stepped out of the room, slowly, carefully, closed the door behind me. Then I did something I hadn't done since childhood. I opened the linen closet and climbed into the crawl space behind the coats. I don't know why. Maybe because that's where I used to hide when the house got too loud. Or when people said my name in that tone that meant not like the others. In that tiny dark space pressed between mothballs and old wool, I found something else. A shoebox. No lid. Inside, Polaroids. 17 of them. Each one showed a different girl, standing in front of the house, some smiling, some not, all wearing white. And in the background of every photo, no matter the year, was the same shape in the attic window. A face, barely visible. Not the same every time, but always watching. In the last photo, taken in 2003, the year June vanished, the face was smiling. I dropped the box. A Polaroid fluttered into my lap. It was blank, except for my name written on the bottom. Mara, Thursday. The date? Tomorrow. There's a certain kind of tired that coffee can't touch. That's what I felt the next morning. Not sleep-deprived exactly, just off. Like my cells had been reorganized in the night. Everything in me wanted to lie down and forget, but everything around me refused to let that happen. Because it was Thursday. The Thursday. And that photograph with my name on it? Yeah, I kept it. I didn't mean to, but I couldn't stop touching it. The texture, the odd slickness, the way it smelled faintly like lavender and pennies, it had a kind of magnetic pull, the kind of object you tuck into your pocket without knowing why. I avoided the attic. I avoided the nursery. I avoided mirrors until I couldn't anymore. Because that afternoon, I walked into the upstairs bathroom to splash water on my face, and the mirror didn't show my reflection. It showed a photograph, just for a second. But I know what I saw. It was the Polaroid again, only this time I wasn't standing in front of the house. I was inside it, through the window, looking out. The frame rippled, and then my actual face came back into focus. My pupils were dilated. My lips were pale. There was something wet under my nose. I touched my upper lip. Blood. It wasn't flowing, just a thin smear, like a nosebleed you don't remember getting. I should have run. I should have packed the car and driven until the gas ran out and then just kept walking. But Hallowell women don't run. We unravel, quietly and always inward. So I did the next best thing. I called the town library. The librarian sounded 75 and caffeinated. Her name was Linda, and she remembered my aunt. "Oh, yes, Esther was a treasure," she said. "Had such soft hands." That gave me chills. "I'm looking for news articles," I said, "about disappearances, specifically local girls my family over the last 50 years. There was a long pause. Then she said, "What name did you say again?" "Hallowell." Another pause, this one heavier. Then she said, "Why don't you come down here, dear? Some things are easier to see in person." When I arrived, she was already waiting at the desk, holding a file folder that looked like it had been rescued from a flood and a fire in the same week. Her hands were shaking slightly. "There's no official record of any Hallowell girls going missing," she said. "Not a single one." I raised an eyebrow. "But," she added, "there's something else." She opened the file. Inside were clippings. Lots of them. Birth announcements, obituaries, party notices, church bulletins, and in every single one, Hallowell girls were mentioned once, then never again. Like this one. Elaine Hallowell, age 9, won first prize at the county quilt fair. And then nothing. No further records. No graduation, no wedding, no obituary, just silence. "The church used to call them homegirls," Linda whispered like it was a curse. "Girls who didn't leave the property. They said it was for safety, or purity, or punishment." "Who said that?" I asked. She looked around, leaned closer. "The women. The mothers," she nodded. I left with the file and drove back with my hazard lights on, heart pounding like a jackhammer. When I pulled into the driveway, the front door was open. Not just unlocked, wide open. And I swear, I hadn't left it that way. The air inside felt colder, like someone had turned down the thermostat I didn't have. I checked every room, nothing out of place. But when I got to the hallway mirror, the big one near the stairs, I froze. Because this time, the mirror wasn't showing a Polaroid. It was showing a moving image. A loop, faint and flickering, like old VHS tape. It showed a girl, maybe 14, sitting on the edge of a bed in a white cotton dress, braiding her hair, humming, then turning suddenly toward the mirror, toward me. Our eyes met. She smiled, a strange, almost recognition smile, and then, still looking at me, she mouthed the words, "It's your turn now." I stumbled backward, hit the wall. The image vanished. I don't even remember getting to the kitchen. I just remember sitting there with my head between my knees, trying to count my breathing. Something rustled near the back door. When I looked up, there was a box, cardboard, taped shut, no label, no postage, just there. I opened it. Inside was a dress, white, cotton, handmade, identical to the one in the mirror. Folded on top of it was a note. "Wear it tonight. You know where to go." E. I started laughing, because at that point, what else do you do? Nothing made sense. I had no idea where tonight was supposed to be. No idea what I was walking into. And yet, I already knew I was going, because the dress fit perfectly, not just size-wise. It fit me like it had been sewn from a blueprint of my body. As I stood in front of the mirror, the real one this time, I saw the reflection of my grandmother's pearls around my neck. I hadn't put them on. They weren't even in the house. I didn't take them off. The air smelled like lavender again. Lavender and melted wax. The house lights flickered, all at once. And when I opened the front door, I didn't step into my yard. I stepped into fog, dense, waist-high, glowing slightly from below, like the whole world had been placed under a veil. In the distance, through the mist, I saw 17 lights, each one hovering, and behind them a voice, gentle, feminine, calling my name. You know that heavy, floaty feeling you get right before sleep? Like you're aware of your body but not in control of it. Like you're already halfway across some dream bridge? That's how it felt stepping into the fog. Except I was very much awake. I could feel the gravel under my bare feet, the brush of damp mist against my legs, and the strange weight of the dress pulling slightly at my shoulders. The pearls were warm, too warm. And then I heard it again, my name, whispered like a secret, echoing and overlapping like it was being spoken by more than one person. Evelyn. Evelyn. The fog pulsed gently with every whisper. Ahead, the 17 lights were still hovering in the mist, but now I could make out shapes behind them. Human shapes. Or at least girl-shaped. Thin figures, unmoving, each holding a lantern. They were spaced evenly apart, forming a perfect semicircle in front of the woods. That was my first real clue that this wasn't some impromptu ghost rave. This had been planned. The girl closest to me stepped forward. Her hair was braided like the girl from the mirror. Her dress was the same as mine, only older, yellowed at the collar. She handed me a small envelope, sealed with wax and a pressed lavender bud. Inside it read, "To receive the memory, give up the name." Signed, the family. I didn't know what that meant, but my mouth moved on its own. "I don't want to give up my name," I whispered. The girl didn't respond. She just turned and began walking toward the woods. The others followed, their lanterns swinging slightly in unison, and like the horror movie idiot I was, I followed them. The moment I crossed the tree line, the sound changed. No more crickets, no frogs, no wind, just hum. A low harmonic resonance, like dozens of voices singing one continuous note. The trees were too perfect, too evenly spaced. That's when I remembered. The forest behind the Hallowell house wasn't natural. My grandmother had said it had been arranged. I always thought she was talking about landscaping. Now I knew better. We walked for what felt like hours. The fog stayed low to the ground, but the trees stretched impossibly high, and occasionally we passed things. Strange, out-of-place things. A rusted carousel horse, half buried in moss. A child-sized rocking chair rocking slowly with no wind. A rotary telephone bolted to a tree, ringing once as we passed, then silent. Every step made my stomach turn a little more, but I couldn't stop walking. Something was pulling me forward. And besides, I needed answers. I wasn't going back to that house until I had them. Eventually, the procession stopped. We'd reached a clearing, perfectly circular, with smooth stones placed evenly around the perimeter. In the center was a sunken space, like an old fire pit, but cleaner, more deliberate. And standing inside it was my Aunt Esther, or at least something that looked like her. She hadn't aged a day. Same haircut, same posture, same eyes. But there was something wrong with her skin. It was translucent. You could see faint veins like wet paper held up to the light. She looked at me. Not like she didn't recognize me, but like she remembered something I didn't. "Do you know why you're here?" she asked. "No," I said. "Good," she said, because apparently knowing would have meant I'd already lost the game. She gestured to the sunken pit. "Come sit." I did. The others stood around us silently, forming a perfect circle. Then Esther pulled something from her dress pocket. A jar. Small, glass, with a cork stopper. Inside was a folded piece of paper and something else. Hair. Mine. I didn't ask how she got it. I didn't want to know. She uncorked the jar and tossed the contents into the fire pit. No flame, just a rush of heat and sound, like static filling your brain. Then a voice, not hers, boomed through the clearing. What was the first name of the girl in the photograph? I froze. I'd never seen a name on the photo. I looked at Esther. She didn't blink. "Say it," she whispered, "if you know it." "I don't," I said, but the name came out anyway. Genevieve. And as soon as I said it, the others around the circle began chanting, not loudly, not even together, just barely audible repetition. Genevieve, Genevieve, Genevieve. Esther reached forward and touched my forehead. Suddenly, I was somewhere else, in the past. But it wasn't like watching a film or falling into a dream. It was my memory now. I was Genevieve, standing on the front porch of the house in 1954, clutching a Bible. Watching a man drive away with my baby brother in the back seat. I was screaming, crying, my parents holding me back. "He's not ready," I said. "He's not ours anymore," my mother replied. My father lit a candle and placed it in the window. Then everything shifted again. New memory. Same house, 1973. I was Sarah now, lying in bed, pretending to sleep while my older sister was led out by 4 women in white. She didn't struggle. She was smiling. Back to the clearing. Esther removed her hand. I gasped like I'd been underwater. She looked me straight in the eye. Every girl in the Hallowell line carries a name they don't remember. One generation protects, the next offers. The third vanishes. I blinked. "You're the third," she said softly. "Just like me." I opened my mouth to speak, but someone else spoke first. It was one of the girls in the circle. Her voice was young, 12 maybe. "She's not ready," she said. And then another. She remembered too soon. Esther's face changed. She looked worried. "Leave," she said. "Not to them, to me. Run." "Why?" "They're not going to let you forget again." The humming stopped. All the lanterns blew out at once. And then I ran, through fog and trees and memory and time, back toward the house. But when I reached the door, it wasn't my house anymore. It was the house from the photograph. Old, rotting, with 17 candles in the windows, and someone was waiting inside. Let me tell you something they never mention in ghost stories. Time doesn't just pass in haunted places. It folds, creases inward like linen, and before you know it, you're standing somewhere familiar that's never existed before. I was on the porch again, but not the porch I knew. The planks were rotted, the swing creaked slower, and ivy had chewed through the railing like it was soft bread. Inside, the air was stale, not dusty, sealed, like something had held its breath for too long. I stepped through the front door and the house swallowed me. Literally. The door slammed shut behind me and disappeared. No seams, no hinges, no doorknob, just a wall. I turned, heart pounding. "Okay," I whispered to myself, "that's new." And then the whispers started again. Not calling my name this time, just sounds. Repeating. Looping. Echoes without origins. 17 steps, turn once, say nothing. She came barefoot, just like before. "Don't go upstairs. Don't go upstairs. Don't go upstairs." The light inside flickered like film reel static, too fast, too unnatural. Every blink of the eye changed the room slightly. A chair would vanish, the rug would ripple, the wall would breathe. I stumbled toward what used to be the kitchen. It had regressed. No stainless steel appliances, just a cast iron stove, a basin, and dozens of jars lining the shelves, each with something sealed inside. Not herbs, not preserves. Teeth. Baby teeth. Adult teeth. Labeled in neat cursive. Elise, 1929. Dorothy, 1956. Marguerite, 1983. There was one labeled Evelyn, 1997. I backed away. My chest hurt. "Am I dead?" I asked aloud. Nothing answered. But the light bulb above the stove burst. Okay, cool. Not dead. Just in a time-eating trauma house run by an ancestral cult. Got it. Then I noticed something glowing in the far corner. A lantern. Not like the ones from the woods. This one was newer. LED. From the dollar store, probably. I walked toward it. Next to it was an open notebook. Inside were pages and pages of handwriting, all in the same hand. Notes, sketches, journal entries, names, so many names. One page read, "Memory is the price. Name is the anchor. Identity must be unstitched for the family to continue." Another, "They come in threes. First girl hides the door, second remembers the code, third one walks in blind." On the last page, something different. A message to me. "Evelyn, you're walking the wrong direction. Stop following them. There is another way out, but only if you stop looking for answers. Hide. Sleep. Forget. They can't take what you don't remember. E." I blinked at the signature. E. That's me. But it wasn't my handwriting. Somewhere upstairs, something creaked. The stairs moaned, one by one. Not the sound of settling, the sound of someone coming down. Nope. Absolutely not. Not today, Ghost Grandma. I grabbed the lantern, ran straight through the hallway, past the parlor, back toward the room with the fireplace. The bricks were cracked, the ashes cold. I threw myself into the space, crawling halfway up the flue before realizing I wasn't alone in there. A face, inches from mine, pale, soot-covered, eyes wide open, smiling, not a corpse, alive, awake. She whispered, "Too late." I screamed and fell backwards out of the fireplace and onto the rug. When I looked again, no one was there, just soot and silence. I sat up, shaking, and noticed the floor around me was covered in small carvings, names etched in the wood. Hundreds of them, maybe more. And some of them had dates, not birth dates. Disappearances. I found mine. Evelyn H., July 31st, 2025 today. But one caught my eye. Eleanor H., July 31st, 1974. My grandmother's name. I touched it gently, and the floor beneath my fingers gave way. A trapdoor. Perfectly square, blending in. I opened it. Below, darkness. Wooden stairs leading into an unnatural, humming blackness. My gut said, absolutely not. My brain said, you've come this far. And then I heard it again. My name. But this time it was my mother's voice, not whispered. Pleady, please come back. Please, don't go any further. I froze. It was coming from inside the trapdoor. Now, logic would suggest that was bait, a hallucination, a psychological snare. But that's not how this works, is it? When it's your mom's voice and you're tired and scared and half convinced you're already dreaming, you follow it. So I did. I took the first step down, then the next, holding the lantern up as it flickered against dirt walls and old roots. The stairs went on forever. I counted 60, 70, 80, and still no floor, just downward into the pulse of the house. Eventually I reached it, a wide stone room, circular, with high walls and no ceiling. A well in the center. Inside the well, water, and a mirror. You heard me. A mirror inside the water, facing upward, and floating on the surface, 17 candles, still lit. There was no wind, but the flames moved, pointing to the center. I stepped closer and saw my reflection. Only it wasn't me. It was Genevieve. Dressed in the same white gown, barefoot, holding the same lantern. She looked up and winked. And suddenly, I wasn't standing there anymore. I was falling. Back into the mirror, back into memory, and back into a version of the story I didn't write. So I didn't land hard, if you're wondering. It was soft, like a mattress made of fog and old dreams. But when I opened my eyes, everything had changed. The room was gone. The well, the candles, even the air felt different. Lighter, brighter, like stepping into an empty photo album. I stood up, grass under my feet, a breeze that smelled like laundry and lemon balm, and in the distance, a White House, perfect as a postcard. Wraparound porch, sun-bleached swing, wind chimes singing like happy silver teeth. A voice called from the porch. "Breakfast is ready, sweetie." I turned. It was my grandmother. Young. No cane, no trembling hands, just soft curls pinned behind her ears, a yellow dress, and a smile wide enough to split time open. "Genevieve?" I whispered. She laughed. Who else would it be? I walked toward her like someone dreaming inside their own memory. I wanted to scream, hug her, ask a million questions, but all I could say was, "Where am I?" Her smile twitched. "You're home, silly. Where else would you be?" And I realized this was it. The commune, the Hollow Creek property. Before everything went dark, I stepped onto the porch. The wood was clean, sanded, and warm from the sun. I followed her inside. And just like that, I was living someone else's life. There were no ghosts here, no whispers, no missing children. Just a beautiful lie wearing my bloodline's face. "Evie," she said, handing me a glass of iced tea. "You'll want to drink up. Big day ahead." Big day? She gestured to a calendar pinned to the wall, July 31st, 1974. I blinked. That's the day she disappeared. The day Eleanor Harper walked into the woods and was never seen again. Except now she was right in front of me, humming to herself, cutting peaches, her skin glowing like porcelain. "Big day?" I asked. "Why?" She smiled that too perfect smile. "Today we gather the new ones. You know that?" I shook my head. "No, I don't." "You will," she said. "We all remember eventually." That phrase, "we all remember." It was carved into the staircase, scratched into the mirror, spoken in the static. I followed her to the living room. On the mantel, Photographs, dozens of them, children standing in rows, teenagers in robes, infants cradled by strange women, all smiling. I squinted. The names were from Elise, Dorothy, Marguerite, the tooth jars. Every child in those pictures had been cataloged. Where are they now? I asked quietly. Genevieve's smile faltered. Safe. Where, though? She turned, her voice colder now. Don't ruin this. Not again. Again? How many times have I come here? She didn't answer, but I noticed something then, the mirror over the fireplace. It was watching me, not reflecting, watching. And in it, I wasn't me. I was her. Genevieve, I took a shaky step back. I want to wake up. You are awake, she said gently. This is the price of looking too deep. I stumbled into the hallway. The house shifted again, walls stretching, shadows thickening. I turned corners that hadn't been there. Doors vanished behind me. I was running now, through a corridor of photographs. Each frame whispered as I passed, "We loved you. You chose this. You left us." I came to a stop at the bathroom mirror. Inside it, another version of me was screaming. Her hands slapped the glass, her mouth open in terror, but no sound came through, just her eyes, wild, desperate. Behind her, I saw them, 17 girls, pale, barefoot, dressed in white, standing silently. One stepped forward. It was the girl from the fireplace, the one who whispered, "Too late." She put her finger to her lips. Shh! And just like that, my reflection vanished. I looked down and realized I was wearing white, the same white as the others. "Oh no," I muttered. "Oh no, no, no." I turned, yanked open the nearest door, and found myself in a room filled with mirrors, not just one or two, dozens, hundreds, lining the walls, the floors, the ceiling. Every single one held a different version of me. Some crying, some screaming, some smiling like they'd forgotten they were ever real. And some were empty, just mirrors waiting to be filled. I was trapped in a catalog of identities. One slip, one memory lost, and I'd become a ghost inside someone else's history. One mirror started to ripple. Genevieve stepped through it, calm as a painting. "You can stay here," she said. "It doesn't have to hurt." What is this place? A refuge, a collection, a way to keep the family together. But the disappearances, she shook her head. They're not missing, they're kept. Kept, that word hurt more than it should have. "You still think this is about you," she said softly. "It never was." "Then what?" She tilted her head. "It's about memory, longevity, containment." I stumbled backward and bumped into someone else. I turned. It was myself, another version. Same hair, same shirt, same age. She looked terrified. "I just got here," she whispered. "I don't know how to leave." "How long have you been here?" She blinked. It was 2013 for me. Time meant nothing in this place. Identity was a loop. Everyone here was someone who had once gone missing, and now I was one of them. Genevieve's voice came again, echoing through the mirrors. "Stop asking questions. That's how it starts." But it was too late, because I had one more, a dangerous one. What happens if I break the mirror? I picked up the nearest picture frame, raised it. A million versions of me screamed, "No!" But I didn't stop. I smashed it. The mirror exploded. Glass shards floating in midair like frozen time, and behind it, a staircase. Again, leading downward, always downward. I stepped onto the first stair and whispered, "Let me remember." And the house answered, "Then you won't survive this." It was colder underground. That shouldn't have surprised me, but this wasn't the kind of cold that stung your skin. It was the kind that knows your name, the kind that waits behind doors you didn't know were there until they opened on their own. The staircase didn't creak. That detail still haunts me. Nothing in this house made noise unless it wanted to. As I descended, the lights shifted from warm amber to hospital white. The steps turned to tile, and suddenly I was standing in a clinic hallway, the kind from old government buildings, peeling green paint, fluorescent lights that buzzed like dying insects. "Welcome back, Evie," that voice again, always out of reach, always just behind me. At the end of the hall, a frosted glass door, on it a black stencil. Larkspur Center for Continuity of Care. I pushed it open. Inside was a hospital ward, but not like anything you'd see in the modern world. It was a mix of 1970s psych ward and country doctor office, complete with metal frame beds, empty IV stands, and a humming vending machine that only sold cough drops and lemon soda. No patients, no staff, except one. A nurse stood with her back to me, writing something in a massive logbook. Her uniform was pristine. Her shoes were spotless, her hair tucked neatly into a white cap. I said, "Hello?" She didn't turn. I stepped closer. "Excuse me, I'm looking for—" She snapped the logbook shut and turned. It was me, not a doppelganger, not a look-alike. It was me, dressed like a 1950s nurse, smiling like she knew how I'd die. "You're late," she said. "For what?" "Rounds," she said. "It's your turn," and handed me a clipboard. Before I could protest, she walked through the nearest door and disappeared. I opened the clipboard. It held names. Familiar ones. Elise J., Dorothy W., Marguerite P., Lucy F., the same names etched on the tooth jars. The ones who went missing. My hand was trembling. I followed where the nurse had gone, stepping into a side corridor labeled Observation. And that's when I heard it, weeping. Soft, rhythmic, like children crying in their sleep. Each room had a number. No windows, just small square peepholes. I leaned into the first. A girl sat on the floor, humming to herself, plucking petals off invisible flowers. Her eyes were closed, lips moving, though I couldn't hear what she was saying. I checked the clipboard. Room 12, Dorothy W., compliant. I moved to the next room. Another girl, this one older, lying completely still with wires coming out of her temples, eyes darting under closed lids. Room 13, Elise J., monitored. They weren't patients. They were samples kept in suspended states, and every single one of them looked a little like me. Same freckles, same posture, same voice if I listened close enough. I wasn't visiting a hospital. I was visiting a catalog of preserved identities. I looked up at the security camera. A red light blinked. I waved. "You're not supposed to see this," a voice whispered through the intercom. But I kept going, because I had to know. Room 14, empty. Room 15, locked. Room 16, flooded with dolls floating in ankle-high water. That part still makes no sense. Then room 17, the only one with the lights off. I opened the peephole and nearly dropped the clipboard. Inside was a full-length mirror. Nothing else. But it wasn't empty. Inside the mirror stood a girl in white, head down, hands at her sides. Not moving. I stared. She raised her head. It was Genevieve, but younger, about 17. Hair soaking wet. She looked up at me and mouthed, "Let me out." I stepped back. Suddenly, the lights above me flickered and the nurse appeared at the end of the hallway. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "Why are they locked up?" She didn't answer. Just walked slowly toward me, hands behind her back. "Why are you me?" She smiled, too wide. "Because someone has to remember and someone has to forget." The walls began to hum. The clipboard in my hands caught fire. I dropped it and ran. The corridor shifted, twisting like a snake swallowing its own tail. I slammed into the vending machine. The soda button blinked. "Lemon blessing. Dollars, I hit it." The can that dropped was warm and glowing. I popped it open, and a voice came from the can, like a radio playing from inside the bubbles. "Follow the wires. They'll take you back." I looked around. Sure enough, a bundle of red and yellow wires snaked out from under the vending machine and disappeared into a wall panel. I pulled it open. Another staircase. Because of course there was. I took one last look at the rooms, the crying, the mirrors, and then I stepped down again. Deeper, because if this place kept going down, maybe there was a bottom. Or maybe I'd find the moment where everything broke. Just one more floor. One more memory. One more version of me waiting at the end. It should have ended there. Any reasonable person would have climbed right back up those stairs, filed it away as a dream brought on by bad lighting and sleep deprivation, and booked the next train out of town. But I guess I've never been that reasonable. Because the staircase didn't lead up. It curled further down. You know that feeling when you walk into a place that was never meant to be found? That hum in your ears like your brain is buffering reality? That's what this was. Like every step echoed through time. And then I saw it. A brass door. No knob, just a plaque. Genevieve H. Hallowell, 1897, Director of Preservation. It clicked open when I touched it. The room was wrong, not in the haunted way, in the misplaced way, like someone had built a Victorian sitting room inside a missile silo. Bookshelves lined the walls, but every book was blank. A fireplace burned but gave off no heat. A wind-up gramophone played something just off-key enough to make your teeth itch. And in the middle of the room sat Aunt Jen. At least, something that looked like her. She hadn't aged a day. Her auburn curls were pinned back like in the family photos from 1925. Her eyes were too wide, too glassy. "Hello, sweet girl," she said. "Did you find your sisters?" "Not yet," I managed. "Well," she sighed, "that's a shame. They miss you." "I was never here," I said. "I never joined. I was just a baby when Mom left." Jen smiled. "Oh, darling, she never left. She reassigned herself. You were meant to take her place." That's when I saw it on the wall behind her, portraits, lined up in chronological order. Elise, Marguerite, Dorothy, Lucy, Miranda, Joanna, Evangeline, each girl with the same nose, same freckles, same shadow in the eyes, and under each portrait, a date of disappearance and a handwritten note. Reassigned Phase 2, Preservation. Reassigned Phase 3, Transmission. Reassigned Phase 4, Continuity. "What is this?" I asked. Jen's smile faltered. "A gift, a very selective, very sacred medical tradition. You locked children in observation rooms. We preserved them. For what?" She tilted her head. "Continuity. Without us, the bloodline thins. The knowing fades. You think history remembers by accident?" I stepped backward. "You drugged them. You're still doing it." "They volunteered," she said simply. "Some more easily than others. Lucy, for example, always loved the quiet. You're not real." Her voice dropped. "I am the part of you that knows. The part your mother tried to burn out, the part that made you come back." The fire flared, and then she said the thing that broke me. "Go check the last drawer in the desk." I didn't want to, but I did. Inside, a birth certificate. Mine. And under that, a second one. For a child I'd never met. Elwyn Hallowell, born 2017. Mother, Evangeline Hallowell. Father, unknown. I staggered. That couldn't be, but I remembered now. That missing year. That haze of hospitals, misdiagnoses, dreams of blood and warm metal. The whisper in my ear when I woke up sweating. "You did what was asked." "You took her," I whispered. "She's thriving," Jen said. "But she's not ready yet. Not until you complete your preservation." I threw the drawer across the room. "You don't get to rewrite me," I snapped. "Oh, Evie, you already did. When you drank the soda, when you signed the clipboard, when you touched the door." "I want my daughter back." She stood now. Her face flickered, glitching like bad VHS. "You have to finish the trial first." I ran, back out the brass door, into a different hallway, longer. This one lined with family photos in reverse order. Me at graduation, Mom holding me at the pier, Aunt Jen beside a hospital bed I don't remember. The lights began to dim behind me. A siren whined, long, mechanical, and low. Subject activation commencing. The wall to my right cracked open. Inside, a room of television screens, each showing one of my missing relatives, frozen in looped surveillance footage. Elise brushing her hair. Marguerite reading aloud to no one. Dorothy writing in her journal, erasing it, writing again. Lucy holding a locket she never owned. Then one screen blinked on. Elwyn. She sat cross-legged, eyes shut, humming the same song I'd heard through the door upstairs. I put my hand on the screen. "Baby," I whispered. She opened her eyes and looked right at me. "You're early," she said. "They said you wouldn't come until part 15. The screen went black. I stood there, shaking, trying to remember who I was before this. Then the voice came back, mechanical, soothing. "Please proceed to the final phase of reassimilation. This concludes the preparation segment." I wasn't just inside a house. I was inside a system, and somewhere deep inside it, my daughter waited. I think this is the part where I stopped being afraid. Not because I was brave, trust me, I wasn't. I was still trembling like a badly tuned radiator. But fear is loud, and eventually, when you get deep enough, the fear gets tired. It gets replaced by something worse. Focus. So I moved, past the screens, past the soft hum of the siren, now fading like a dream. I followed the arrow lights embedded in the floor, glowing faint blue. Not because I trusted them, but because they were the only thing still moving. They led me to a door labeled Memory Reclamation, Do Not Enter Without Host Medication. Underneath that, a red rubber bin of small orange pill bottles. I didn't take one. I walked straight through. Inside, the ceiling arched like a cathedral. But instead of stained glass, the walls were made of photographs. Thousands of them, clipped, pinned, glowing faintly with an unnatural blue. Rows upon rows of Hallowell daughters in school uniforms, birthday dresses, church pews, hospital gowns. But the photos were all wrong. Each one was me. Not literally, but the same face. Over decades, even centuries. I recognized it now. The freckles, the dimples, the same stubborn jawline, all versions of me, preserved in time. And just ahead, mounted in a glass case like a museum exhibit, original specimen, Elise Marguerite Hallowell, 1894. She looked exactly like I do now, except for one difference, her eyes. They weren't haunted. They were hopeful, like she didn't know yet. The plaque read, first subject to achieve full genetic reinstatement, memory threshold 82%, conscious yield acceptable. You know what the creepiest part was? There were visitor benches, like people came here to watch. A familiar voice echoed down the corridor. I couldn't place where I'd heard it before. Calm, professional, slightly nasal. The bloodline never forgets. You forget, but the body remembers. You thought it was over, but you never left the program. You were born into it. Preservation is a promise, not a punishment. The photos began to shimmer. One by one, the girls in the images blinked. I swear to God, they blinked, and in the same moment, the air went cold. My fingers numbed. From behind me, I heard slow, barefoot footsteps. I turned. A little girl stood in the doorway. She had a yellow sweater and mismatched socks. And my nose. Elowen? She didn't answer. Instead, she held out her hand. This way, she said softly. I followed, not because I trusted her, but because I knew she wasn't really here. Not entirely. This was a memory file, a projection. She was showing me something, or maybe someone was using her to guide me. She led me to a steel elevator hidden behind one of the older portraits. The buttons weren't labeled with floors, just symbols. Elowen pressed the one that looked like a spiral. The elevator jerked violently, then began to move sideways. Of course it did. It opened into a room bathed in golden light. Inside were rows of cots. Children. Some sleeping, some sitting quietly, others staring into nothing. Not restrained. Just waiting. And standing at the center of it all, clipboard in hand, her hair wrapped in a scarf, my mother. She didn't look surprised to see me. Elowen, she said calmly, go back to your rest chamber. My daughter obeyed. Then Mom turned to me. You were never supposed to come this far. My voice cracked. Where are we? She didn't answer. Instead, she walked over to a small machine in the corner, pressed a button. A light field appeared, displaying what looked like my brain, rotating, cross-sectioned, alive. You showed early signs of cognitive bleed, she said. We tried to stall it. The family always gives us problems around age 28. What is this place? She looked at me now. Tired, hollow. Continuity research. We're the last defense against forgetting. I wanted to scream or hit her or hug her. I didn't know which. You let them take my daughter. No, she said, you did. You signed the consent form the night she was born. I don't remember that. You weren't meant to. I backed away. This is insane. She didn't deny it. Then she said something that froze me. Do you remember what you were like before she was born? Really remember? And I couldn't. I couldn't remember a single real detail from that year, just fragments, static, a song I'd hum but never heard, a basement that may never have existed. We have one chance to save the archive, she said. If you run now, they'll move Elowen to phase 4. You won't see her again. What do I have to do? Finish what your aunt started? No. She stepped closer. Evie, we only exist because the loop resets. If we break that, I'm not a ghost. No, she said softly. You're a mirror. I heard the door seal behind me. No escape now. And then she whispered, lay down. It's time to remember the beginning. So yeah, turns out you can't scream in your own memory. Not really. Your body doesn't breathe here. Your lungs aren't yours. You're just a shadow dragging sound through an echo. But I screamed anyway. I screamed at her, at my mother, at the walls, at the golden light, at the faces of the children who all had that weird Hallowell nose. Nothing changed. And then everything did. The golden light dimmed to a dusty amber. A low vibration passed through the cot frames. The cots, neatly arranged just seconds before, began sliding sideways, almost politely toward the back wall, like they were on a conveyor belt hidden beneath the floor. Elowen disappeared with them. I ran after her, but the hallway grew longer with each step. That's when I realized I wasn't running on floor. I was running on memory, and it didn't want me to go that way. So I stopped, and the hallway stopped stretching. "You're learning," said a voice behind me. It was her again, Elise Marguerite Hallowell, the one in the glass case, the original. Except now she wasn't in the case. She was standing in the hallway barefoot with the same yellowed nightgown I'd seen in the photos. "You're not real," I said. "Neither are you," she replied. "Not in here." She circled me slowly. Her eyes were sharper than I expected, curious like a scientist, not cruel, just clinical. "You're the 17th, she said. "The last viable channel. That's why they let you remember, but not too much, just enough to be obedient." "I'm not obedient," she smiled. "Then why are you still walking toward the room?" And, well, touché. I hadn't noticed until she said it. My body was still drifting, like it knew the path better than I did. I turned. The corridor ended at a spiral staircase made of what looked like oxidized copper. Every step hummed with a vibration that crawled up my calves. "You can stop here," Elise said, "but Elowen won't." "What's down there?" She tilted her head. "The archivist." "Oh, good. That sounds friendly?" She laughed, and for a second I saw something bright behind her eyes. "Go. Ask your questions, but be careful what remembers you back." I descended. 12 steps, then 37 more. Eventually I stopped counting. The staircase opened into a vast room filled with water tanks. Enormous glass cylinders filled with thick viscous liquid the color of moonlight, and inside each tank, a version of me. Sleeping. Floating. Each one paused in a different era of dress, from bonnets to shoulder pads to the same Nirvana t-shirt I wore in college. But they weren't dead, they were dreaming. And at the center of the room, suspended in a tank so big it looked like a spaceship, was her, the archivist. 7 feet tall, skin like paper, eyes closed, hair like spider silk floating in the fluid. Her body was covered in fine metal threads, wires running into panels like she was plugged into the foundation of this place. I didn't recognize her, but I did, because she was made of all of us, all the Hallowell girls, layered like palimpsests, every version folded into one. She wasn't asleep. She was waiting. As I stepped forward, a panel near the base of the tank lit up. Subject, Evelyn Elise Hallowell. Last uplink attempt, failed. Genetic reintegration pending. Memory span 71% unstable. A static hum filled the room, and then I heard her voice. Not out loud, not in the air in my bones. "We are the song that never ends. We are the page that rewrites itself. You came here to forget. You stayed to preserve." I dropped to my knees. This was too big, too old. It had been going on for generations. My family hadn't just been part of a medical cult. We were the experiment, and we weren't the subjects. We were the carriers, archivists, genetic conduits, trained to pass memory across time, to preserve people who shouldn't be remembered, people who weren't gone, but weren't allowed to be found. And I had just reopened the final file. The room went black, then white, then suddenly I was in a suburban house, my house. 1997, I could hear someone laughing in the kitchen, the sound of toast popping, a dog barking, rain tapping against the window. I was in the memory. One of my own, or not. Elowen ran past me. She was young again, maybe 4 years old, and following her was a man. My father. But it couldn't be. He died in 1993. I stepped closer. He didn't see me. He picked her up and kissed her cheek. But then he looked over her shoulder and saw me. He looked directly into my eyes and said, "You can't preserve what never belonged to you." That's when the world shattered. The scene collapsed in on itself like paper in fire. And I was back, on the floor of the archive, shaking, sobbing. Alarms were sounding overhead. Memory breach detected. Crosswave instability increasing. Subject EH unsynchronized. Prepare for data collapse. A voice came through the speaker. Familiar. My mother. "Evie, you've gone too far. They're going to reset you. You have to run. Now." But Elise appeared beside me again. "You want answers?" she asked. "There's one level deeper." "What's there?" She just said, "The ones who never woke up." Here's the thing they don't tell you about running underground in a dream state archive built on the bones of your family's collective memory. Your feet don't always hit the floor. Sometimes they hover, sometimes they sink, and sometimes they don't even belong to you anymore. But I ran anyway. Down a narrow hallway lit with bluish-white pulses, the light bleeding like veins under frosted glass. Elise didn't follow. She stayed with the archivist, almost like she couldn't go further, or wouldn't. Elowen's voice echoed ahead of me, just once. "This is where the broken ones go." And then silence. No, not silence. The sound of absence. You know how your ears ring in dead quiet? This was the opposite. Like something big was swallowing up all noise before it could be made. I turned a corner. A single elevator stood waiting. Open. Its walls were mirrored, but my reflection was wrong. It blinked when I didn't. It smiled when I looked afraid. I stepped inside. There were no buttons, just a switch labeled wake and one marked sleep. I flipped sleep. The doors closed. The ride was long. Maybe forever. I don't know. Time didn't exist anymore. Only temperature and taste and the feeling of your past selves crawling just under your skin. When the doors opened, the air that hit me was cold and metallic. Sterile. The kind of air that's been processed, not breathed. The room stretched out in all directions like a museum. But nothing here was on display. Everything was hidden. Rows and rows of sealed containment units, black slabs with glowing readouts. I walked past them slowly. Each one had a name etched into a tiny screen. Margaret E. Hallowell, non-viable. Jonas C. Hallowell, obsolete. LONH, pending. My name wasn't there, until it was. I stopped at a panel that was still blank, but the screen flickered as I got closer, like it was just learning to spell me. And then it printed, Evelyn E. Hallowell, expired. Oh, okay. So I was dead, or worse, already archived. But here's the kicker. I didn't feel gone. I felt painfully present. More real than I had in years. Maybe the truth isn't that they preserve your body. Maybe they archive your will. I moved to the next row. These containment pods weren't labeled. No lights, no names. Just pulsing, quiet thuds behind glass. And from one, a knocking sound. Soft. Repeating. Not frantic, rhythmic. Like a heartbeat. I placed my hand on the glass. The moment I did, it became clear. Not the pod, me. My hand turned transparent. The veins shimmered. I felt light travel up my arm like static, and a sudden rush of voices surged into my head. Not speaking, whispering, chanting, pleading. Dozens, hundreds. All of them were versions of us. Elowen, me, Elise, even Aunt Nora. We were not meant to be remembered. We were meant to remember. They stored us too deep. We forgot how to climb back. You opened the wrong door. No, the only door. I stepped back, breathing hard. Behind the glass, something stirred. At first, it looked like a child. Hair in a braid, pale dress. But her face, it kept changing. Older, younger. Eyes opening, then sealing over. Mouth whispering my name, then its own, over and over. Then I heard Elowen behind me. But I didn't turn around, because I knew. This Elowen wasn't real. I said her name anyway, just in case. Ellie? She stepped into view. Her eyes were full of something ancient. You can stay here, be with us, or you can take one of the exits. But not both. I hesitated. What's the difference? She held out her hand. Her voice sounded like it came through a tape player buried in snow. Stay, and you forget everything. Leave and remember everything, but no one will believe you. I stood there, hand halfway out. And then the lights began to flicker. Alarms. Again. A crack appeared in the far wall. Pressure built. I smelled ozone and citrus, always a sign, somehow, that something was waking up. Choose now, Elowen said. So I made my choice. I ran, back to the elevator, hit the wake switch. The doors groaned. Something slammed into the hallway behind me, but I didn't look. I've learned by now that in memories, looking back is how you get stuck. The doors closed, the elevator rose. This time it stopped somewhere, unexpected. Not the lab, not the archive, but the house. The original Hallowell house, except it was new again. Outside it was raining. A porch swing creaked in the wind. Inside the walls were painted soft yellow. Someone was humming. A woman. She was seated by the fire, knitting something pale blue. She looked up and smiled when she saw me. Evie, she said gently, you came back. Where am I? I whispered. She smiled wider. Where you started. And then I woke up. On a bus bench in upstate New York. It was morning. I had no bag, no ID, just a black notebook tucked into my coat. Inside it, a single line written in the neat handwriting I recognized as my mother's. Some memories wake up too early. I looked around. No one noticed me. But something deep down had shifted, because I remembered. All of it. And I knew this was just the beginning. The thing about being the only one who remembers is, eventually, even you start to wonder if you imagined it. I didn't go to the police. What would I tell them? That I had been sleeping in a memory vault buried under a research facility no one could trace, with a girl who may have been my sister or myself, or both? That everyone I loved had been archived like dusty volumes in a library no one admits exists? No. You learn to speak in riddles. You learn to let some memories settle where they fall. For 6 weeks I wandered, motel to motel, whispering names like charms before I slept. Jonas, Elowen, Elise, Aunt Nora, even Father Dunn. The black notebook stayed with me. It didn't update, it didn't glow, it didn't open secret compartments. But one day, while I was riding a local train through New Hampshire, I saw a woman across the aisle reading a pamphlet. The title, The Sleep Church, Remembering the Forgotten. My chest got tight. It wasn't a well-designed flyer. It looked like something Xeroxed 100 times over. Grainy photo of a mountain house. A tagline that read, if you think you've been here before, you probably have. I leaned in. Excuse me, I said, trying to sound casual. Where'd you get that? She glanced up. Mid-30s, gentle smile. Guy was handing them out at the last stop. Weird, right? I kind of love stuff like this. She passed it over. On the back was a date and a location. August 9th, gathering. For those who wake up too early. I marked the day, but I didn't go, because something told me that was the trap. Instead, I went back to where it all started. The Hallowell house. Not the archive, not the memory trap, the real house. Or the shell of it, anyway. It had been boarded up since the investigation. The entire property declared condemned after the disappearance. I had to hop a fence to get in. Inside, it was still. Same faint smell of wax and dust and mold. Like memory. Like sleep. The walls remembered more than they let on. I moved from room to room like someone walking through their own childhood dream. Elowen's room still had glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. The attic still creaked in 2 specific spots. And in the basement, I found her. Not Elowen, not Elise, not even me. Just a woman sitting in a wooden chair, hands folded neatly in her lap. Her face was half-shadowed, but her voice was calm. You made it back, she said. Who are you? I asked. Someone who got archived a little differently. Think of me as the librarian. I almost laughed. Of course she was. I approached slowly. There are others, I said. Others waking up. Some too early. She nodded. The system's breaking down. You broke it, or maybe you were the last key needed. I looked around. So what now? She tilted her head. Now you decide what to do with what you remember. Most people beg to forget. But not me, I said. No, she agreed, standing up. You've always been the persistent one. She handed me a folded slip of paper. This is where they moved the archive. I opened it. Just an address. A cold one. Numbers. Coordinates. They won't stop, she added. The people who built it, they want to start again with new families, fresh volunteers, sleepers who won't wake. My hand tightened around the note. Then I'll find them. The librarian nodded once and then disappeared. Just gone. I didn't call after her. I didn't cry. because something else had returned to me in that moment, a purpose. The Hallowell vanishings weren't a singular incident. They were a prototype, a test. And I'd passed it. I left the house quietly, didn't bother closing the door, let the ghosts breathe a little. And for the first time since waking up, I didn't feel alone. Because I knew, somewhere out there, Elowen was awake too. We all were. Every archived soul, every erased child, every name scratched off a government database, we were remembering. And memory once loose is uncontrollable. They can't stuff us back in. Not all of us. Not this time. So I'm heading north, to the coordinates, to the next house, to the next archive. And if I disappear again, leave the porch light on and check your dreams for static. So you made it all the way through. That's not nothing. You followed a thread through tangled memory, old paper, and fading names, through locked basements, through storm-soaked glass, through the eyes of a girl who shouldn't have remembered what she did. And now, here we are. The house is quiet again. The last voice has stopped echoing, and all that's left is the soft hush of night. Some stories end with answers, others with justice. But this one, it just ends, because there's something haunting about a story that doesn't wrap itself up neatly, like waking from a dream you almost understood, like hearing your name whispered in a language you forgot long ago. Maybe the Hallowell daughters never truly vanished. Maybe they just slipped sideways, into memory, into sleep, into us. So if tonight your dreams are deeper than usual, if you hear someone laughing in the dark or catch the scent of chalk and lavender, don't panic. They're just visiting, like they always have. Thank you for being here with me. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let everything fade away just a little more. Breathe in, breathe out, and I'll see you in the next one. End of script. Good night.